Greetings sailors and welcome back to World of Warships, and me finally not being full of the cold, which wasn't too bad in the scheme of things. There are worse things to have than a cold, but it's still not fun having a head full of ickiness. But I am feeling much better now, and so today I finally got back to World of Warships after several days of, well, pretty much just napping and watching films. And although I spent quite a lot of the day when I have been playing Warships today trying out the Alaska for obvious reasons, most of those games were not very good in terms of how I did in them, but I at least have started to get a handle on the ship, and I'll say right now I think it's in a pretty good state just as it is right now. Normally these things tend to go through a round or two of testing, but I don't know, I'm not sure what they could really tweak on the Alaska. But this video is not about the Alaska, because one of the games I got sunk quite early, so I thought I'll try out one of the other ships that we have for testing, which of course is this one right here, the Jean Bart. And although this is not its first round of testing, as far as I can tell the main thing they have changed since last time is the reload booster, which previously ran for 30 seconds and you got a 10-second reload each time. Now, however, what they've done is made it so that it actually shaves off your reload by 50%. So it's effectively slower. Now this is the base reload time on this ship with 26 seconds. You can get that a bit faster at the cost of turret traverse, of course, and you can also have adrenaline rush coming into play. But even so, it's not going to be quite as punchy as it was before, and I think that's a good thing, because I personally gave feedback that I felt that the reload booster was a bit too much, and others felt the same, although some people were okay with it, and they have toned it down a bit. It's also got a bit of a longer cooldown as well, because when it first came out you could really spam it. I think it only had like a 60-second cooldown, or am I completely misremembering? Anyway, but it's now a bit longer. It's still got the 30-second action time, but it's that minus 50% to your reloads, so it doesn't feel quite as powerful. The ship otherwise, I think it's pretty much the same as it was. It's got much upgraded AA over the Richelieu. It's slightly slower than the Richelieu. I think the secondaries are the same. I'm trying to think what else. It's got slightly more hit points. There's probably one or two other things. I think it's got slightly better Sigma. Slightly better. It's like 2.0 versus 1.8. But it's still the same armor scheme, and that makes you kind of squishy at this tier versus all of the nasty HE firing cruisers. Although, of course, when you're in one of those nasty HE firing cruisers, it's the nasty massive AP firing battleships that you're worrying about instead. So, if there's any awkwardness in this game, it's pretty much going to be from me being a bit rusty, because as I say, I've not played pretty much while I've been all stuffed up with the cold. So, I'm not convinced I was fully doing the right thing in this one. I was basically trying to always be in a position where I was pushing into the enemy where possible, rather than fighting defensively, and I don't know if that was necessarily the right call, because the enemy team, well, at the moment they've gotten 2 cap circles and there's a big old push through the A cap, and maybe I should have positioned myself to fight them a bit more defensively, especially as the enemy team only has 1 destroyer. There is also a carrier in play, but it's a bottom tier carrier, and, well, in fact their bottom tier carrier is dead already, so that's not even a consideration right now. So really, I'm not entirely certain I am doing the right thing right now, and it is especially leaving that North Carolina that's trying to push the B cap out in the cold. But then I'm not really entirely sure why that North Carolina is trying that to begin with. It's not the best move. But if I'd turned around before this point and been more working the north side of the map a bit. I don't know, this might have gone somewhat differently, but it might still have ended up with the same eventual outcome. I don't really know. So I've had one use of the reload booster. You've got to see it in action right there. This is not using whichever gun equipment gives you the increased rate of fire at the cost of turret traverse, which would probably be a perfectly viable choice on this ship, especially if you have an expert marksman captain to offset the penalty to the turret traverse, because the base turret traverse is pretty good to begin with, and I might even have to try that setup just to see how it works. I also can't remember if I have adrenaline rush on this captain. It's not a captain I specifically respect. In fact, no, it actually is. It's Dasher, but she's only got 10 points. I decided to take Dasher out for a spin. I might have to try it with one of my French captains that has more points to play with. But I just really wanted to take Dasher out for a spin, so that's what you're hearing right now. I should have remembered that. The audio in my headphones as I'm recording this is not terrifically high, so the rest of you will have probably noticed some time ago that yes, it is in fact Dasher speaking Russian in a French battleship. It would have been kind of funny if the Dasher captains, if they'd gotten her to maybe try and do the accents for the relevant nations, but on the other hand, it probably would have just sounded really terrible. Anyway, never mind. So that's an angled Alsace. We're going to try the reload booster again with some HE shells, which was pretty dirty with the first iterations of this ship, but is not quite so dirty now. I am, however, not going to get very lucky in terms of RNG. I'm not going to set any fires at all over these HE salvos. So I am going to get some damage done, that's fine, but it's not going to be getting the fires out of it that I wanted necessarily. So we've taken back the middle cap, but that Gneisenau now is in serious trouble. I have to give a shout out to our destroyer in this one. Our Chung Mu really did play quite well. You'll notice a little bit later on when the enemy team starts to push around a bit more, because they've kind of stalled out. They pushed through and then they've all gotten bogged down, and a whole bunch of them in fact went chasing after our Kronstadt, who is now all alone on the A line. So that initial worrying push really has petered out, and that gives us maybe some space to counter push. If nothing else, that Missouri's taken a thorough battering, so that's one of their top tier battleships that is almost but not quite dead. So final HE salvo, and I think I can't remember, does this one set a fire? Do I finally... No, this one does not in fact set a fire, but it does knock off a fair chunk of health while they're trying to repair, and so somebody else is able to get the kill. So, this is stabilised a bit. We're actually now coming back on points, although we are technically still behind, but it is, you know, it's quite close. You wouldn't want to bet on it at this stage. We're about even in ships. We do have the caps, but we're in a decent position now. We're the ones that are actually pushing. And as I say, our Chung Mu at this stage is starting to do some really very good work. It probably helps that the enemy carrier got knocked out so early, because of course that means they don't really have to worry about air spotting so much. And there wasn't a huge amount of radar in this one either, I don't think. At least I think that's true. I've said that and now I'm suddenly second guessing myself. I'm wondering if that is in fact the case. I don't think there was. Which, yeah, anyway, I'm getting distracted. No, it doesn't really matter. So, yeah, at this point I'm starting to push in on the middle, and although there is the enemy destroyer around, I'm not too worried, because there's that island to play with, and more importantly, I know that they are there. And I've also got more than enough health to take a couple of hits, so there's very little chance they're going to get a full broadside of torpedoes into me. Not in this particular situation. Sometimes just knowing where a destroyer is, you know, that's massively invaluable information. So sometimes you'll see battleship players being extremely hesitant about pushing in when they really don't have to be. Now, given the destroyer is there, I am actually throwing him some manoeuvres right now, rather than just charging right in. But I probably could have just kept going, because that's what Musashi's doing. And both pushing in together. I mean, German torpedoes aren't super dangerous by themselves, but what could be dangerous is if they get to live long enough to put out multiple salvos, because the reload is quite fast. That's one of the nice things about the German destroyers overall, is they get to reload fairly quickly. But even having turned away like this, I'm still, you know, I've still got the angles to actually do some work and keep putting out the damage. And I'm up to over 100k at this point. So, you know, these guns are still even up tiered, pretty good. In fact, really they're better than the tier 8 ones just on the Sigma values alone. I think do you even get like a little bit less range? I can't remember. But still, the 2.0 Sigma, you know, it's quite nice. You do notice it over the Richelieu, because I have got the Richelieu myself. So we've got a nice firm points lead at this stage. The enemy team is pretty fragmented, and we've actually got somebody that's now pushing through to potentially cap the A cap. And oh, there's the Z46, and around about now is where I start using that nice new minimap feature, except not so nice if you're on the wrong end of it, because that Z46 got spotted, and of course I was able to very precisely aim on the minimap with that little circle it gives you and get the kill, which is really very useful. That's probably the last big threat that the enemy team has at this stage. So I've been swinging around all the while to re-engage, which I probably could have done a little bit sooner. As I say, it's been the better part of a week before today when I'd actually fired up Warships, so I was definitely feeling it with the Alaska, jumping in straight into like high-tier cruiser games. It's probably why I was getting such comparatively lackluster results. But even so, as I said, I could feel it does seem like a very decently balanced ship. And Clyde the Monkey especially has been singing its praises in the Discord. He really likes it. He seems to be getting on very well with it indeed. But yeah, this is just mopping up at this stage. It's just these couple of remaining enemy ships to get a bit more damage out of if we can. There's not really anything we could do to throw this unless people suddenly started detonating all over the place, which seems a little unlikely. So there's another use of my reload booster, and although it certainly gave me more damage than I would have had if I hadn't had it, if that makes any sense. It's a really awkward sentence. I don't know if it made that huge of an impact. It's kind of difficult to quantify exactly how much extra damage you're getting, or rather how much of an impact it has over the course of a match. But I don't feel like it's as strong as it was. That's the important thing. I think like they've watered it down a bit, and I think as it is, it's still useful at times. It still does give you extra damage at times, but it isn't as nasty to be on the wrong end of as it was before. Because being able to just kick out that much damage with battleship guns in that rapid space of time, that was not a thing that the game needed to have especially. So having it watered down a bit feels better, feels fairer, and although of course I don't know if this is going to be the final version of how it looks, I would definitely be happier with the Jean Bart coming out in this state than how it would have been to play previously. But of course this is still under testing. I've still got the work in progress tag on there for a reason, so they might give it some further tweaks before it comes out. So yes, this is the one game in this that I played today, and it turned out to be rather decent, but I will keep beavering away at the Alaska, because of course that's going to be the one that everyone is interested in. But we also got the Le Terrible as well to play with, so we'll see how that is. It's the same calibre of guns as the Aigle, and similarly terrible concealment for its tier. So very much a gunboat. Very, very much a gunboat. So hopefully you enjoyed this preview of the Jean Bart, the tier 9 reward ship of some stripe. And if you did, you can do all the usual things down underneath the video, and of course, as always, stay tuned for more.